Monday evening, rather, I'd like to welcome Trisha Chapman. She is the founder and managing partner of impressivecv. Now, I have to stress this. She has a LinkedIn following of over 127,000. So she brings her expertise from recruiting, personal branding, and CV and resume writing, to a wide and vast audience. And I have to say, too, when I first joined LinkedIn, I couldn't tell you how many times I actually would see you pop up on my actual LinkedIn feed with your content and, things to do as far as, resume writing and I think interview preparation and stuff like that. So I have to say, as far as my journey, using LinkedIn and, I'm going in that direction. It's kind of great, having you actually as a guest on our live stream. So how are you doing?
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Adam. I am really, really well. And you're right. I guess it's all about consistency. If you're seeing me pop up, then obviously, no matter where I am located in the world, the digital space these days is, is fantastic.
Right. So when we spoke last time, you told me you were working on a blockchain and cryptocurrency project, something along the lines of consulting and maybe a few other things. Could you tell us some of the details about that?
Yeah, sure, of course. So I guess, well, let me just maybe take a step back. So I have two different companies. So my husband and I have partnered together to offer a company called Driddy Consulting. And we just sort of, we over the years, we had so many questions from people coming to us, what's Bitcoin? How do you buy it? And what are all these smart contracts, DeFi, non-fungible tokens? And I guess the interest just started appearing as more and more adoption occurred. So we thought, hang on a minute, why don't we turn this into a business model? So over time, we just created a business. We're purely educational. We don't do any financial advice. It's just education basically around Bitcoin and then all other sort of decentralized finance.
Right. And you were just telling me a moment ago that this project's been taking off pretty well in Australia. And in fact, to your surprise, it's become much more popular there than the UAE, United Arab Emirates.
Exactly. Yeah. So I guess being in both countries or an Australian citizen, and then living in Dubai, the adoption is actually or interest, I should say, is skyrocketed, I guess, from our clients within Australia. Definitely institutions and businesses are taking on the crypto world, I guess, or, fintech side in the UAE, but more at an individual level. I can see a lot more interest coming from Australia, which originally surprised me.
Yeah, to say the least. So would it be fair to say a lot of people in Australia probably share a lot of the problems that people in the US and the UK have? I think traditional currencies, the US dollar, the British pound, the Australian dollar, they're really not serving people so well anymore. And the promise of Bitcoin, it's almost self-evident to be honest.
Absolutely. No, I agree. Yeah.
So as far as your project, what can you disclose at this moment? Because I remember when we connected last time, it was kind of more or less in stealth mode. So of course, I only want you to disclose what you feel is most appropriate at this time.
No problems at all. I think, I'm open about all of this because the more adoption there is, we all benefit, all of us in the crypto world, I guess, will benefit as adoption increases. So I think, and you hit the nail on the head, these types of maybe Western world countries might benefit more so from this type of education and awareness and adoption because the dollar is just, being printed at unprecedented amounts and the system surely has to collapse. So I think, people need to understand that, storing your value these days is completely different to what it used to be. Even just 2 years ago, the prices of everything, inflation occurring, even gold and silver is manipulated so much at the minute. So I really think the importance of educating people and which is what we do. So how to buy Bitcoin, the various exchanges, smart contracts and applications, even tax minimization. So people are not even aware, for example, of, what's a taxable event when you're buying crypto. Right. And another thing, I'll pause in a minute. Sorry, I know I talk a lot.
No, by all means.
So
we welcome that here.
Good. So yeah, taxable events, and then at the end of the year, you might have made amazing gains, but then such as Australia being taxed say 45% of all of those gains. So if you're not tracking, and people don't realize that it actually is heavily regulated. The tax guys are all over it. So being aware of all of this before you just go down and deep dive and start trading, I guess, or buying, or it's important to understand. So not only is Bitcoin, I think, is a store of value, so you shouldn't probably be riding the dips. It's more just a store of wealth, and maybe you could be allocating small amounts for play money.
That's awesome. And what originally piqued your interest in Bitcoin and blockchain technology? Everybody tends to have a story, and it's always it's always kind of like this aha, flip of the switch type of moment. I've had that. Chris has had that. So I always like hearing people's individual moments as far as how they got into this direction.
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, to be honest with you, hubby, he's the guru behind it. And then
awesome.
I just, turned into marketing and helping, and then getting involved in it myself. But to me, it just makes sense. Like, I don't have a story. It just clicks. People manipulate the markets. The dollar is being printed. When you're capped at a 21 million supply, it's inevitable that the demand-supply ratio, it makes sense that your wealth will be stored.
Right.
I don't have a story. It's just, it clicks.
Right. And what's the name of your project?
What do you mean? Is in the company?
Yes, the company.
Driddy Consulting.
Okay. Driddy, could you? Yes. Could you spell that, please?
Yeah, sure. DRIDI.
Driddy Consulting. Got it. So, and as far as crypto information, what was your first focus? So, in creating essentially these modules so people can kind of have accessibility in a very simple, I guess, platform. Because I think that's what's ultimately going to be the success of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, is how accessible is it as far as learning it, conceptualizing it. So what was your main focus starting this project off?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, I guess, blockchain to some people, even though it's been around for years, it's actually not really a new technology. It's just that it's evolving and building upon. So just educating people basically what the foundation of the technology is. Bitcoin, and probably the most common one alternatively, being your Ethereum. So just explaining to people that, what actually is it and how can these things be utilized. Now, for example, which as a classic example I always give to people about blockchain, you say, for example, the US voting. So if, for example, you used to put your ballots in the mail, and people can take them out and alter it. But if we had a voting system now, whether it's the US or global, through the blockchain technology, you literally cannot change this. It's visible to everyone on the chain.
Right. And it's almost impossible to change the entire ledger, to say the least. And, it makes me wonder, right, Chris? Imagine if we had that here. Imagine if all of our US elections were done over a blockchain. I don't think the powers that be would actually like that, to be honest.
No, not the way the things are set up now. They're doing everything they can to prevent that from happening, because there's some shady things that go on behind the scenes here in America to sway things. No one can look no further than the whole Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton fiasco that went on. So it's so blatantly open at this point. It's kind of like a slap in the face to the general public that we know this technology exists, but hey, haha, we're not going to use it because we're going to continue the status quo of abusing the masses and in scale to our benefit, to keep our pockets fat, to keep our our donors and all of the lobbyists' pockets fat. It frustrates me. It's one of the reasons why I'm getting into blockchain, is because, like you said, it's one of the best. It's trust. It's a trust chain. It's a trust net. It's confirming. It's verification. It's what's needed in the world today, where so many people are pointing fingers at one another and governments dividing us. when in reality, they are the ones that are really causing a lot of the issues that we're having by all of these regulations and lockdowns and things that they've put in have caused more harm than they've done good. And, instead of owning up to it and saying, hey, we've made a mistake, they continue to just go down these path of lies, and anything that is truth, they shy away from. So Bitcoin being the trust net of the world in the future, would they want that on the blockchain? That's why they don't want the financial system on the blockchain, because they'll see, the Pandora Papers just came out today. They don't want all of that information, where their money's being hidden, where all that money comes from, where it goes. They don't want that public, because more than half of them wouldn't be in office if people knew. So I'm on the same page as you when it comes to using blockchain for voting. That was one of the first things that I saw it very useful for was, hey, not just ownership of, let's say, NFT, which could be property rights or something else, but also voting and the transparency of voting. It's great to have transparency in financial systems, but it's also great to know if my vote actually counted and if I can track it and see it in real live time. And with a blockchain, I personally think it would change the whole voting structure, because now you could just have voting going, instead of voting every 4 years, why can't it just be an ongoing vote where if I want to change my vote in real time, I can change it. And, it forces the candidates to be on their game throughout the whole, because they'll win the candidacy and then they won't act on anything they said for another 4 years until they're up for re-election. So if you have an ongoing live vote where people can just vote you out as time goes on, if you're not performing, you know what I mean? If there's a candidate there that's ready that's making all of these good suggestions and you're slacking on your game, that other person's going to take over right away. And I know that, switching back and forth would seem a little crazy, but it would show the world that a lot of these things could just be automated in the first place. And we don't need people making those decisions, because really, in reality, if it's a community vote and we're already all voting, why do we need to vote for somebody to vote for us? So I'm really excited to see how it all spans out, especially when it comes to voting. So sometimes I go on a rant, but I'm going to
those are excellent.
And get back to the interview and let Trisha talk a little bit more about what she's doing.
Yeah, by all means, Trisha.
No, I think you raised a really good point, and really, with all of the manipulation and the way that the system currently is happening, obviously we're creating two different classes of societies, and the wealth gap inevitably just gets bigger and bigger. And the petrodollar is pretty much dead. The banking system is, it's collapsing, and to be honest with you, the third world countries are the ones that are starting to step up. I mean, look at El Salvador, starting to adopt it as one of its national currencies. So I think it might take time, but definitely it's the future. If not, it already is here.
Absolutely. And especially, in 2021, I think the US, UK, I think much of the English-speaking world, but especially Australia has come into the focus in the world right now, especially with the COVID-19 and the lockdowns. Some of this police state type of behavior from the government officials going on. I would imagine if blockchain really took hold in Australia, the amount of accountability that would probably bring to both the financial and political system would be astounding. And I kind of wanted to know from you, what is it like in Australia right now? And as far as maybe even the tech environment, what is it like there for cryptocurrency and blockchain? Would you be welcomed with open arms, so to say, starting off in Australia, or maybe it's some other issue?
So definitely, I mean, it's very well adopted. It's really easy. And in fact, I have a classic example of sending money from Dubai to Australia with the banking system taking a week. I'm not sure if you are familiar, but a couple of banks have shut down over the last few days, globally, actually, just in terms of they're saying maintenance, but really is it? We don't know, because there's numerous banks that's having this shutdown. And sending USDT from one exchange to another in Australia took half a day compared to what it did bank to bank. And then
Wow.
Australian banks accounts accept crypto. There's there's a list that becomes, it's pretty instant that you can transfer, but you generally, to sell your USDT or your fiat, I guess, once you've converted it to the exchange, to transferring it to your bank, it's pretty much instant, like maximum 15-20 minutes, compared to what a bank to bank is, at 3 days. So it's really well adopted here. But on the flip side, taxation, they're all over it. You will be hammered, I guess, if you don't submit your report. Yeah. But I guess maybe it's a good thing that the regulatory is there, because it means that anyone can use it if you know how to do it safely or accurately. Yeah. I just want to mention one other thing. You mentioned about Australia. Definitely. So living in both Dubai and Australia in the COVID pandemic, I can see Australia is quite strict compared to the rest of the world. That's for sure. I don't know if it's a trial from the people above to way that they want things managed, or I don't know. I need to be careful, but it's definitely draconian.
Yeah, to say the very least, Lynn. I think
it's pretty crazy, and then you're starting to see it here in New York too, and it's one of the reasons why I'm moving my family down to Florida and why we're starting our business in Florida, because with the BIT license and all of this red tape in New York State, it makes it very hard to start a blockchain business. Even if you don't have a token, even if you're just associated with blockchain and facilitate, if any word blockchain, just they're against it. It's very hard. So that's why me and Adam decided, hey, let's establish this where somebody, like in Miami, where you have a mayor that has a Miami coin that is really open to it, in comparison to New York City, where we have a lot of small businesses that are closing. And if our business model is to help small businesses, it's going to be hard for us to get an attraction in New York City. And half the businesses are closed, where we could go to Miami, where it's basically wide open, like nothing happened when it came to the pandemic. Just like you said, the difference between Dubai and Australia is kind of what the difference is between Florida and New York, and we're in the same country here. So you can only imagine the amount of infighting that's going on between not only the politicians, but what they've done and driven a wedge between us, which used to be a certain way. Like, first it was black and white with George Floyd over the summer, and now it's anti-vaxxers versus vaxxers. It's whatever narrative they can spin to have us hating each other, rather than pointing our fingers up at them saying, hey, no, you are the ones that are actually causing a lot of these issues. And blockchain, for us, is our answer to fight back, to bring transparency to all of this corruption that they have.
I think it's I don't know. I think it's a distraction, all of this. I think that something else is going on in the background, and the COVID and everything else is a diversion to perhaps even a financial reset, maybe even having what China's rolling out, their digital coin, and then all of a sudden you no longer can say purchase, I don't know, something at the supermarket, meat, for example, because you've already purchased 3 lots of meat for that week.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's a social credit system, and it looks like that's the way we're going. And it's really crazy is some people are cheering it on here in America. Like, America's about freedom. Like, vaccine or not vaccine, if you believe in it, you should have the choice to make it yourself, not have it mandated. I understand that people say it's safe and it helps, but the science really isn't there for that, for them to be making these bold claims to mandate things. And now California mandating it for kids before it's even approved by the FDA, which let's not even talk about how corrupt the FDA also is, with the rotating door between government. So it's like, it's just mind-blowing to me that we still allow these things. And a lot of it, I don't know if it's generational, because a lot of our congressmen and politicians are from the baby boomer generation, so they are very stuck in their ways. Marketing has always been catered to their generation over years because they've always been the biggest the boomers. They were the baby boomers. So now that they're starting to die off and they're not getting as much attention as the echo boomers that the millennials are getting now and Generation Z, it's kind of like they're kind of holding on to their the last of what they have, being resistant of this new technology. And it's really sad. And, I had a conversation with my uncle. I'm not going to get into it, but by the end of the conversation, him using the reservation app for his haircut in his salon, he understood why technology is so much better, because he wanted to call up and make a reservation and or just walk in. And the guy's like, it makes it so much easier. I don't have anybody waiting. I don't have to pick up the phone. It's all on he's like, oh, wow, it's right. It's much more efficient. So I'm like, by you writing checks and clogging up the financial system, if you had just used Bitcoin or Coinbase or even just Zelle, you're making it more, you're telling the banking system, hey, we don't need to use checks anymore. Because the reasons why is because you have a lot of these old stubborn boomers that are using checks, that want to use their credit cards, and
Well, I mean, and I know, Adam, we were just talking before the call, but the likes of, say, for example, Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp gone within 6 hours or something, the whole, on a global scale.
Right.
Imagine if that was the banking system, the SWIFT codes system completely gone. Now, if I wanted to transfer $1 million or even $10, I can just jump onto the blockchain and do that versus banking system.
Right.
You know what I was thinking today with Facebook going down? Imagine Facebook adopts blockchain and has merchants accepting, and that's the main way merchants are accepting their payment. And then they go down for 6 hours. Imagine that. You know what I mean? So you really do need blockchain, just because, your Facebook, these things need to be in the blockchain so they cannot go down. They can't be hacked. There's no, bug or snag that happens. It's possible. It's going to take time to develop them on top of Bitcoin and on top of these other protocols. But what you're saying is just sparking a lot of thought in my head right now.
By all means.
No, and one other thing I wanted to mention is that people forget that they buy, they get excited and they want to buy Bitcoin or whatever coins that they want, the memes, anything. But even if the servers or your exchanges are shut down, then they forget that there goes your coin. So it's so important from a custody perspective to be keeping or even knowing how to transfer your currency or, your assets from the exchanges into your cold wallets, which people don't know how to do this,
Right. Absolutely. And I was actually going to ask you, as far as cryptocurrencies, which ones look particularly appealing to you right now as we speak? And I know there's a lot coming out, and there's a lot going on, to say the least. But especially with Drudy Consulting and this venture that you're now creating and pushing forward, what looks good to you right now?
Well, as I mentioned, I don't want to give the financial advice.
Right. I'll rephrase it this way. Which ones look fun?
Well, I think in line with what we were saying about all of the Facebooks, everything, I really think that the decentralized social medias, and now I know, the likes of something like Twitter, converting into something decentralized would be up and coming, especially if we're going to be seeing more of these shutdowns.
Right.
And then, of course, I can't go past just typical Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana has done really well. I think we're probably on the top end, but yeah.
Awesome. And as far as Dubai, I find Dubai a very fascinating place. It seems like in many ways a bastion, if you will, of free market. I guess you could say free market capitalism, from what I know about it. The very, very low taxation rate, the highly business-friendly environment. Now, in a perfect world, that's really what we should be enjoying here, whether it's the US, Australia, the UK. However, Dubai always finds itself in the news as being actually very forward and very and very much leaning into the future as far as business and tech. So with your time there, tell the audience, what is it like doing business living in Dubai? I think more people should know about it. For me, on the outside, it looks like a futuristic city that you probably see in like The Fifth Element, or like one of those really cool like old school sci-fi movies. And on the other hand, it also looks like the Miami of the Middle East at the same time as well. So it's like a weird dichotomy there. So kind of hearing from you, what is it like there?
Yep, perfect. So I guess so for the last 6 years that I've been in Dubai, it evolves, and it's a country that rapidly changes. There is construction happening, 24/7, which I guess is why, the glitz and glamour appears, at a whole new level each year, probably, if not. So I guess now, obviously, I need to be careful because what you see in reality is a little bit different beyond the facade of the glitz and glamour, because don't forget this service industry. So there's a lot of people who are paid absolutely nothing, like not even below minimum wages, to be able to get this glitz and glamour happening. So,
and that's the cost of it, really, the exploitation of labor.
Exactly. Yeah. So the likes of us Westerners who hold Western passport would be paid, fantastic rates and tax-free money. But then on the other hand, you have got those guys working in, say, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, earning next to nothing to be able to get this beautiful city happening. So, there's always two sides to the story. However, in saying that, the country is very forward-thinking. They are open, always bringing in innovative. Fintech, blockchain has really taken off compared to the rest of even the GCC, which is the likes of Kuwait, Qatar, even Saudi. They're way above, which is what attracts people to come and do business. So I think because the weather and the climate is so hot, and obviously it's desert, there's not much, they try to bring other reasons for people to come and live in the country. And they've done very well at that.
Wow, that's incredible. And I guess it's the same everywhere. There are always two sides of the coin, and I would imagine such affluence, especially such affluence on that level, comes at a price. And it is unfortunate that a lot of that stuff still happens. The exploitation of certain groups for these, I guess, wide scale labor projects, so to say. To say the very least. It's it's
hey, Adam, we have that here too. We have
I was gonna say we still have that too.
We've been conditioned here in America to point our fingers over there and say, hey, that sucks over there. But it's still, I worked at a Shake Shack, man. We were paying people like just above minimum wage living in New York City. That's fucking impossible. I'm sorry for cursing, but I would have single mothers having to take the train, find babysitting, all of these things. By the time they were done, paying all of their expenses, they were still in the red. It's just impossible for some of these people to get by, especially in big cities where the cost of living is so high. But I know what you're saying. It's that exploitation. It goes all over the world, and
I want to link this because this is something really important and reality. So people are using Western Union. I'm sure you would have heard of Western Union. So they will be earning this amazing money in Dubai, even though from our standards it's nothing. Like we couldn't even survive off this. And they're sending money back home to their country. Say, for example, Nepal, where their wife has to travel, maybe 2 hours on a push bike to go and find the Western Union, to then go and get the money that the husband has sent, then loses half of it through the exchange rates, and then the Western Union takes. So.
El Salvador is a perfect example of how that's working right now, and the remittance, like the money that Western Union is going to lose just from El Salvador. I think it was $600 million a year or something like that, and the amount of remittances that go from U.S. to El Salvador is 23% of the GDP of El Salvador. So it's like the Western Union thrives on that, and it's sickening because, like, what are you really doing besides just pressing a button across? A lot of these middlemen jobs are just going to get automated away, just like politicians. And it's like, if you can have a direct peer-to-peer, or like just where things are more direct in terms of what you're engaging with, and get rid of that middleman and have it automated, that's the way, the world is going. We talk about all of these horrible jobs. There's a reason why we have 10 million open jobs in America and they're not getting filled, because people don't want to fill those shitty jobs anymore. If they know that you can literally make a robot that flips burgers, why haven't you done that yet? Why am I going to take a job and flip burgers in a fast food place? And I could see it when I was managing. This was 5 years ago, but when I was managing kids in Shake Shack, a lot of them were 18, 17-year-olds kids. They just have a completely different mindset on how work. They're all about creating and art and connecting with one another, because even though they may not do it as much face to face, like the connection they had, they knew about everything before they even got into work that day, like what was going on, who wasn't coming in, like they were just so connected between Snapchat and all of their little apps that they use in Instagram. It's a different world for them, and they're not going to take what we've been taking for so long. And the same thing for me too. Like, once I could get out of the race and I discovered blockchain and could profit off that, why am I going to work in restaurants? Because I'm from hospitality and restaurants. Why am I going to work 70, 80 hours a week in a restaurant and live paycheck to paycheck when, it makes no sense. So I completely understand where you're coming from with that. And it's interesting, and that's why we're all here in blockchain. And
you're right.
It's kind of attracted us to this global, force that is helping us change these injustices that we see around the world.
Right.
Absolutely. And even interest. I know, for example, banks now giving, say, 0.2, which is actually relates to a negative interest rate with all the inflation occurring, versus if you put it away, say, on Binance in your earn, and you can earn 6% and live off just interest if you're struggling for work. So I think, and maybe if people don't starting to adopt this, or they will eventually have to rely on universal basic income. Because that they don't know any other ways to be able to meet the standards of living that will be, implemented.
Right. And kind of dovetailing off what both of you are saying, especially with the promise of blockchain. But imagine if, let's say, for instance, the U.S. Military spending budget was on a blockchain. What if police chain of custody was on a blockchain? Imagine the amount of accountability that would bring. Of course, that would also piss off a lot of people as well. But one of the things that I saw on the news regarding Australia, which is I think something we've certainly seen a lot here, there was, I believe, an individual in a local park. I believe he was violating the mask mandate, for instance, and he was there with his young daughter. And this was all over the news maybe about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And an officer tackled him right in front of his daughter. The little child was crying. I'm a father, so when I see that I find that very, very heartbreaking. And the guy was arrested for merely not, wearing a mask. And I think these mandates are really creating a whole different class system, unfortunately. And and I think especially things like decency, compassion. These are being thrown out the window now. And I think now maybe one of the only mitigating things right now is something like blockchain, something to bring a little bit more transparency, to the system, and a little bit more accountability, as well. You can just turn on the news, American news, and you can kind of hear an almost laundry list all of the incidents you could say involving police brutality. You can laundry list all the incidents regarding just overall like political corruption in our central government in Washington, D.C., malfeasance and misuse of tax funds, all this stuff. I mean, you can list this stuff for days. And I can imagine that if blockchain was implemented on some sort of mass level, I think the amount of honesty and integrity would bring back. I think this would actually raise countless amounts of people out of poverty. And I think it would actually only do good as far as, bringing real meaningful, change. Because I think right now, between the three of us, our generations respectively, we are in a situation where I think much of the bad decisions are kind of hoisted on all of our shoulders right now from the past 35 plus years. So we're talking about, Cold War era decisions, post Cold War era decisions are all hoisted on our shoulders right now. And there's really no, ejector seat for that. There isn't. This isn't, this isn't the 1970s or the 1980s. You simply couldn't just go ahead, really just work one job, maybe two jobs, but let's just say one or two jobs, get a house, be able to save up for a nice nest egg in terms of retirement. Those eras are long gone. So I think the social contract between people and government, it's gone in Western countries. I think it's totally gone right now. And I think no matter what's being said or done with whoever is voted in, I think it's all smoke and mirrors to most people. I think there's such a deep level of cynicism now. There's virtually no trust in the system. And I don't even remember this as a kid, by the way. I think, when I was a kid, I think people voted Republican or Democrat. Nobody really cared. Nobody went to war about this stuff. People moved on. And I think maybe because the economy was a little bit more stable back in those days, there wasn't this animosity towards the system, animosity towards
finger pointing,
There wasn't this finger pointing, at least back then. And whereas
it was like, you don't talk about religion and politics. All of a sudden, everybody's talking about politics now.
And that's all that there is to it. And I do think that there is a vested interest in the system for people to really be at each other's throats. I think when people are at each other's throats, it's easier to take money out of people's wallets. That's what I really do believe that. And I don't remember this level of animosity, years ago. And nowadays, everybody's being reduced to whether it's your background, whether it's you're vaccinated or unvaccinated. And this almost seems like a controlled demolition to me right now. And it's almost being rubbed in our face. I don't even think there's even a very creative way of hiding it anymore. I almost think there's almost a certain hubris or arrogance, from the powers that be.
Not everyone is awake. Not everyone is awake like this.
No.
So I'm aligned with you in all of this, but the vast majority of people, I mean, look at the media, for example, how heavily censored it is these days.
Yes.
Even a couple of screenshots, even taken from CDC that might not be in line with, say, Facebook's algorithm. Right. People are not awake, and it's so difficult to be able to find information these days. You literally have to go digging into a BitChute or Rumble or something to be able to at least find something substantial outside of their narrative. So I think the divide is caused by those who are awake and those who maybe are still trusting the government with everything.
Right, and I think if you look at English-speaking countries, it looks like a very similar script. I know things are done a little bit differently, but I think between the U.S., the U.K., and Australia, I watch the news. I'm like, there is a pattern here, and I'm not saying that these people, necessarily read off the same script sentence by sentence, though. But one can wonder, maybe they all play golf with each other at the same country club, and they kind of shoot the shit like, okay, this is how we're gonna implement policy for the 2020s, so to say.
Yep. Puppets.
And we were talking about that earlier today, Adam, the Bilderberg group and all the mass planning that goes on above. But we're not going to get into that. But there's definitely a lot of room for improvement when it comes to our governance. At one point, I do feel that America did stand for freedom, and I do believe the American people. A lot of American people are great people, but it's our government and the politicians that are really putting a sour name on Americans, because like all around the world, everybody, for the most part, doesn't really like America. You know what I mean? It's a very sad thing, because you would say that 20 years ago, it was a different story. The economy was better, 9/11 had just happened. Everybody was standing in solidarity. And instead of, here we are 20 years later, we had this war on terrorism and we did nothing. We spent all of this money, all of these lives lost, innocent people's lives, and we accomplished nothing. Meanwhile, China has leapfrogged us 10 times over when it comes to their technology and data
and AI and all that,
and robotics. And we're sitting here pointing our finger at them like they did something wrong for wanting to try to advance their culture. You know, you may not believe in their governance system, but they are moving forward and doing things for their people as a whole that we're not doing. And it's sad. It's really sad that we're not trying to advance and use the technologies that we have available to help society.
And not only technology that China is advancing, look at all of the agriculture and land that they've started to purchase or already have purchased in
everywhere.
Africa.
Yeah.
Well, everywhere, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
right. Yeah. And, you know, I would, you know, even the way I think countries, whether it's conduct diplomacy or war, if you look at the nightmare and the mess of the withdrawal from Afghanistan, and by the way, many American troops died there, and by the way, many veterans, many troops from Australia and the UK also, serving there as well. And it seems like all in many ways was kind of done for naught the way this was performed. If we had some sort of mechanism, like accountability mechanism like this, countries would be very reluctant to go into these foreign engagements like Afghanistan or Iraq. I mean, the amount of accountability would demand
because they can print money. If they couldn't print money, they wouldn't do it because they wouldn't be able to afford it.
Right.
But when you can just print money, they talk about it in the Bitcoin standard. It's just like once we got off that gold standard and say, hey, we can just print as much money as we want to pay for these wars. That's why, England and all these countries were broke after World War II and coming to America because we were just sitting on all the gold. We were just sitting there on it.
Right.
And, from that point on, all the fuckery and corruption that happened that led us to where we are now. I hate cursing and everything, but that's what it is. It's the rich getting richer, the poor getting poorer. You have these charlatans that sit next to the money printer with their hands out. And when you have access to early money at no interest, you can buy assets and continue to buy assets that appreciate in value while the rest of society just sits there and stacks fiat dollars that decrease in value. And the gap just keeps getting wider and wider and wider and wider. And we just sit here wondering, but it's the government policy that makes it so.
And
I put myself on mute.
No, come on, Chris. No worries.
Trisha. I know this is your interview, so I'm gonna sit back for a little bit.
Yeah, I guess on that note, I guess it begs the question. So I guess why tax people if you can just print infinite amounts of currency? I know a few influencers. I think, in fact, Anthony Pompliano even tweeted that earlier. But it makes you wonder what insidious things are also going on. And as far as Trisha, as far as your Dritty consulting and projects, what do you have in the works over the next few months as far as modules and like subject matter and maybe parts of blockchain and cryptocurrency? What do you think people really need to know the most right now as far as kind of navigating this new blockchain and crypto world?
Yeah, honestly, our main aim is just purely adoption. So I'm really trying, and in terms of price points for the business and consulting that we offer and services, we really try to hit it at price points that even, an average worker would be able to afford. Because from our side of the story, the most important thing is knowing and educating people about the importance of being aware of it. What's Bitcoin, why Bitcoin, the history of Bitcoin, fundamentals. Yes, it's extremely volatile. We get that, look, I think it was a 10,000 drop over the last 3 or 4 days or something. But over the time, if you are willing and able to put in a little bit every week, over the long term, you're always going to be storing your value and not only making money, but preserving your wealth, which at the minute, not much does. So coming back to your question, what is my main aim? Honestly, it's just for people to be purely educated about cryptocurrencies, differentiating between them, and knowing, not going so much into say the blockchain technicalities, but just being aware of how to physically buy it, where to buy it, how to store it, and just be educated.
Right. And what's your take on non-fungible tokens? Is that something that you plan on covering with your education modules, or is this something that maybe you want to, maybe revisit in the future?
Yeah, we do. We do cover NFTs and memes. I don't agree with memes. I think we try and we just, at the end of the day, it's the network.
Right.
Elon, for example, that's who you're purchasing. It's not really, there's no value. I don't personally believe in Dogecoin. It's him. That's who you're purchasing. So yes,
Right.
we cover this. But, and even look at the pump and dump schemes, Safe Moon, for example.
Oh, yeah.
We just need to be careful with people. If they're beginners, I don't want them to obviously be losing, coming out worse off than where they were. So
Right.
we always try to tell people just to be purchasing coins or Bitcoins, the safer ones, in terms of what you're willing to lose, because you don't want to be going backwards by getting into this, and just empowering them. Yeah.
That's awesome. And, I think that is a good point when you brought up Dogecoin. It certainly seems like you are purchasing some sort of part of Elon Musk's likeness, or maybe as far as where his I guess where his aim in the market is during that week, so to say. Listen, it is essentially a meme. It's very cartoonish. I certainly see why people find it entertaining, Dogecoin, but I would say that's certainly one to be very wary of.
Absolutely. I think maybe in the future, what could work in these types of things is, say, for example, Manchester Football Club. People will start buying the tokens or the coins for the entities, and that's what you're purchasing rather than, say, a membership or something. That's maybe where I see it all going.
Yeah, we like the social token. Raoul Paul was just talking about that on Pomp's podcast today. We were talking about how social tokens would work and how you have a community. Perfect example would be something like Nike or Disney. There's a community behind those iconic brands that people are willing to get those tokens now, knowing that they would go up in value as the value of that company continues to increase and more value is driven to those tokens through the economics of whatever system the brand can digitally or virtually make online and drive demand for that token. It's definitely possible. And, and it makes people, instead of being customers, you can be investimers, where you're investing, because your best investors are going to be your customers, right?
Yeah.
Because they believe in your product. Like, who else would you want to? Nike. You would want people that are wearing Nike shoes to invest in Nike, because obviously they're going to continue to buy your shoes as well because they believe in your product. So those are the best investors, that you can have. Customers are the ones that also are able to invest in your company as well and can believe in it. And then you can, if you hold a certain amount of Disney coin, then you get X amount off of your Disney Plus subscription, or a Disney World vacation, you get 20% off, or you get special access to the park an hour early, whatever, perks that you can get with a certain amount of tokens and holding either an NFT token, or even if it's a regular, fungible token, it's Disney token that fluctuates. There are going to be ways for them to figure out the economics of that to make it, tiered and stuff like that, I think.
I think though, it will only take a couple of these big entities to adopt them before then it becomes a wide scale. But then I think we need to be careful in terms of how can they also be manipulating these as well. So, it's great, but is it going to just be a new system, of like the current system, just on a different way if they're manipulated? I think, we need to be careful, because Ethereum, you can still build upon this and edit it.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying a lot of these tokens will probably be on Ethereum or Solana or something. I don't foresee a lot of these brands building their own blockchain, because people aren't going to want that. They're going to want the trust of an open blockchain. So if you have, let's say, Nike and Adidas, and Adidas says, okay, we're going to be on the Ethereum blockchain, and Nike's going to say, oh, we're going to have our own blockchain, people are going to be attracted to Adidas more and more and more, because they know that Adidas can't manipulate the price of the token because it's built into a smart contract that lives on Ethereum. So, I do think that Cardano, Solana, Ethereum, not so much Ethereum for these tokens that need to move around fast, but I think that, you're going to start seeing things built on them over the next 5 to 10 years. And it's going to be quite interesting. I see Polkadot being at a cross section of a lot of these things with their hub and spoke model with Substrate, being able to stitch everything together. Same with Cosmos. Those two blockchains there, I feel, are going to be like the glue that takes all of these other blockchains and allows them to be able to
absolutely
communicate with one another, whether it's value from an NFT or value from Bitcoin or value from the US dollar. They're going to be able to stitch away together where it's going to flow so seamlessly in the back end that people aren't even going to realize they're using a blockchain. They're just going to hit a button, be able to trade whatever they want or pay for whatever they want seamlessly.
Which at the end of the day is the innovation. But the problem for us is we don't know it's MySpace or Facebook. We can't pick the winner yet.
That's definitely a good way of putting it. But I guess that's also what makes this period of time particularly exciting to say the very least.
Absolutely.
So I mean, listen, this is 2021. I think we're starting to see the beginning of, I think, the fourth industrial revolution, this new tech revolution, and I think it's going to be our generation, which is more or less parallel to the World War II generation. I think that helped bring all of the abundance and affluence and kind of stability to the modern world. I think all these solutions, it's going to be coming from people who are vested in this and people who are pursuing something worthwhile in this space, a project, a startup, creating a DApp. It's going to come from these people, because I'll tell you this: anytime I hear politicians talking about blockchain, it's very tone deaf. It's overwhelmingly tone deaf, and it seems like the reflex right now is to regulate, and it's a shame because it's something that brings a lot of promise, and I think this is something that will bring so many people out of poverty. This is something that will bring a lot of liquidity to the economy, much needed liquidity, for people to live, for people to flourish, for people to invest. It is ideal that we have a society that is actively involved in investing. Much like after 1945, when essentially World War II was won, and then you kind of see the economic boom of I guess you could say the 50s and the 60s. You saw people actively participating in the economy. You had the average layperson buying treasury bonds in those days because they had 10% plus returns on those. You could actually buy a bunch of treasury bonds, and then you could put those aside for your children's college education or something else worthwhile in the future. This technology might be the magic bullet, so to say, for a lot of this. But I think all of us, we have to be very stubborn, and I think we have to be also very persistent in pursuing this, because I think over the next few years there will be a lot of pushback from many facets of society in almost every direction. So for me, I commend anybody who's in this space doing something. It's a risk. I mean, you are daring. You are daring to fight for a better tomorrow, so to say. As corny as that may sound, that is really what it is.
Look at China. Look what China did. They banning all of the mining, etc., because they want the control of the people. So
yeah, and they may flip the switch on that in a few months. I think, first off, I personally think a lot of those CCP leaders are billionaires to begin with. I don't think any of their wealth is published. So I think right now they want to buy the dip. And I think by doing this, they can, manipulate the price to an extent and, enrich their cronies and enrich themselves. So I think a lot of us who are in this space kind of seen a little bit of that playbook already. And I don't think it's going to be as effective as time goes on. But listen, Trisha, I want to say thank you very much for coming on to our show today. I think we had such a great conversation with you. We covered a lot of ground today, to say the very least. And listen, give give me more of your info regarding Dritty Consulting. I'd like to obviously tell more people about it and maybe get the word out a bit more on this. And like I said, I support and I'm happy for anybody who's in this space and that is doing something, because it's not an easy thing to do. It isn't. Chris and I know this. We'll tell you from firsthand experience. The blockchain grind. It is that. It is a grind, but it's a worthwhile grind. But nobody said it's going to be easy, and I think anything worthwhile in life is not easy. So, Trisha, like I said, it was an absolute pleasure having you on. Please give me more information about what you're doing. I'll be sure to spread the word, and I'm looking forward to talking to you. As time goes on, and have you come back on as a returning guest as well. I think we talked about a lot of great stuff, today. And like I said, my chips are all in when it comes to blockchain and cryptocurrency, and I think that's why we're all here.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate your time. It's been a wonderful hour, and I would love to be back on the show if you feel it would benefit your audience.
Absolutely.
Great.
Absolutely.
Okay, gentlemen.
Listen, have an awesome day. We'll talk to you soon.
Take care, guys.
Bye.
Thanks again.
Bye.